The best part of that is the faces that Buckley makes along the way, John. Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. We are back here for you on a cold and blustery fall day in central Iowa. And we're excited to do this. The internet's out here in the office, so what better thing to do to pass the time with but to get behind the microphone and give you another action-packed episode of ITR Live. Maybe we rename it to ITR Firing Line. Would you like that, John?
Yes, yeah.
You would?
That would be a good name.
All right. Well, the theme for today, though, is special announcements. So, but because I'm the host and I'm the one that presses record here when we get started, I get to go first. So, something that we teased out in an earlier episode that might happen, but we are going to be releasing one final election 2022 installment of the ITR Foundation poll. And we don't know exactly when that's going to be, but hopefully within the next few days that we will have updated numbers on the election here in Iowa, because I'm not buying it. I'm not buying some of the numbers that are coming out of other polls. I think we're right. They're all wrong. And I want to look at it one more time. So, Chris?
I'm excited.
Good, because you're the one that's gonna sign off on it. I'm glad you're ready to go. So anyway, that's really exciting. We're going to come back and obviously, as usual, you can see all the full results and everything. We want to be transparent about it at itrfoundation.org. But we'll also have some things to say about it here on the podcast. So, other special announcement, John.
Yeah, I just learned that Governor Reynolds is going to Minnesota to campaign for Dr. Scott Jensen, who's the Republican nominee for governor there. And so I thought that was really exciting. Governor Reynolds is very popular, not only in Iowa, but also in Minnesota. And so I think Dr. Jensen has a real strong chance of winning. Minnesota, of course, is mostly a blue state, but there's some cracks in that.
Do you have any food or entertainment recommendations for the governor while she's there?
Well, it depends what part of the state she's going to, but I'd recommend any of the Swedish meatballs, and there's a lot of good apple pie this time of year and from the orchards. And
Fine.
Well, that is exciting, and I did not know that. It is exciting, I think, on a couple of different levels. One is that Governor Reynolds does have some popularity outside of Iowa, and we've seen that and talked about it, that people are recognizing what good things are happening in Iowa and how effective Governor Reynolds has been at championing conservative issues and in getting recognition on the national stage. But I think it's also indicative, like you said, John, that some of these so-called blue states are poised to elect Republican governors. And governors are where it all begins, and I think are leading this ballot across the country. But Minnesota is absolutely, that is a race that Republicans can win. It appears to be that in Michigan against Gretchen Whitmer, that's close to a dead heat. We're at a point where a Republican appears to possibly be favored in Oregon. And I saw another poll that showed the New Mexico governor's race is close. So
New York,
and New York State as well.
Yeah.
I mean, think of it. These are Democrat bastions, and it is encouraging for me that even in blue America, that there is a growing recognition that the progressive agenda isn't working, and I'm excited for that. I'm excited for these other states. I want Iowa. I want Iowa to be great. I'm thankful for our governor and our legislature and our leaders for leading the way. But if we're serious about states being these laboratories of democracy, and that we believe that the evidence is right there of how great things are working in Iowa, then yes, it is also encouraged. We should celebrate that being carried out in other states. And I'm not convinced that Minnesota is as blue as some say. I mean, they have elected Republican majorities to their legislature several times over the past decade. And it is a state that's also trending to the right, and I'm here for it. So that's good. So great job, John.
Yeah.
All right, I'm excited.
That came in off the wire. It was an inside tip that I got. So,
well, all things Minnesota run through John Hendrickson.
Yeah.
So turning back to Iowa for just a minute, John, you forwarded this article to me from Bloomberg in politics, and I had seen it as well. And the article's decent, but the headline is just exactly what I love to read. But GOP poised to cement grip on Iowa, ending its swing state status.
Yes.
That's it? That's all I get? You forwarded me the article, John.
Well, I thought you were gonna provide some
okay.
insights
all right, help me
and
out
analysis.
here. No. Yeah. So is the Republican Party poised to cement their grip on Iowa?
In fairness, before you hit record and you say, we'll just see what we get today.
This is what we're getting right here.
This is what you get.
Yeah, exactly. We're in rare form. Top gear. Let's go.
I think it's looking that way. I mean, there seems to be a general trend favoring Republicans in Iowa, but I still think you have, especially in the 3rd district, and then kind of that Iowa City, Cedar Rapids corridor that I think is blue. I think those areas are still going to be hard to shift into the Republican camp, and I wonder sometimes too, because we always talk about, and I have no evidence for this, but we always talk about suburban voters, and they just seem to swing all over, back and forth. Would you guys agree with that? I mean, it seems
yes.
like they would go Republican sometimes and Democrat the next time.
I'm gonna jump in, and before Chris, ridicules me again for not being better prepared for this segment, but I've got a red hot take in response to this article.
That's the sort of thing you should have led with then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's already happened. I think absent whatever happens in this election, I think Iowa's already a reliably red state. And this is now sort of the epilogue to this, as you will, is that Iowa votes more reliably Republican now than Texas. It's been roughly plus 8, 9, 10 in the last 2 presidential elections. Any forecaster would say that Iowa, absent anything in 2022, is no longer a swing state at the presidential level.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Do you think it's because the political culture in Iowa is changing, or is it a response to the leadership of Governor Reynolds that is doing that?
I would love to say that it's a result of conservative governance and the people have recognized. I think there is some of that. I think there's been a great realignment in American politics of, folks in the coasts and a handful of liberal enclaves or states that vote overwhelmingly Democrat and, call it flyover country, but especially the upper Midwest has just shifted Republican. It's not just it's not just an Iowa thing. Like we said, there's been a shift in Minnesota over the last 10 years. There's been a shift in Wisconsin. There's been a shift in Michigan. And certainly Ohio used to be the bellwether state at the presidential level. So goes Ohio, so goes the country. Well, Ohio is now about a plus 10 Republican state as well. So there's just much like you saw in the Deep South, maybe in the 80s and 90s, where they were, had been Democrats since Reconstruction, are now solidly red states. I think that has now happened in many parts of the upper Midwest. Now, Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan were much more blue when they started than Iowa was purple. So that shift has moved everyone to the right. But I would say, I think in Iowa, we've been great stewards of given that responsibility to govern, and we celebrate that. And so, yes, I think there's a lot of that realignment that has happened. But my prediction, and this isn't the prediction episode of the ITR Live podcast, I believe that once this election is over, Republicans will hold every statewide and federal office. And so that means that all 4 congressional districts are going to go Republican. Every statewide office, yes, that includes Tom Miller and Mike Fitzgerald. I just think this environment in the electorate in Iowa wants to elect Republicans. So that's my early prediction, my red hot take on all of it. So I think that we're just not a swing state anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that Democrats can't win and the pendulum might not swing back in the future, but we're not a swing state anymore. It's not purple.
Supporting your point, maybe a better illustration is looking at the state legislature. Look at a map of the Iowa House or the Iowa Senate, color coded, and those maps are going to look overwhelmingly red. Sure, there are communities or spots across the state where there's a dense cluster of Democrat or liberal or progressive voters, right? And frankly, some of those clusters may exist to help sway a congressional election. But by and large, looking at the state as a whole, folks community by community have overwhelmingly chosen to back to our friends at Texas Roadhouse, vote red.
Yeah. Thinking about what that map looks like, something that I've seen Iowa House Speaker Pat Grassley say for the Iowa House, there is a Republican serving in the Iowa House from 98 of 99 of Iowa's counties. And after this election, it's going to be 99 out of 99. To think about, and it's not, you talk, John, about the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City corridor. Well, there are elected Republicans in the corridor as well. And some of them suburban mostly, but I mean, you've even seen House Republicans here in Iowa competing, potentially in areas that represent Des Moines proper. So there's a big shift there. And so that's my hot take on that headline. I love the headline because it shows how far we've moved, but I think a lot of what they're talking about has already happened. So, okay, well, we probably got to get down to, business here. But, John, you've got a new release here from Tax Foundation that, while on the face of it doesn't necessarily showcase the progress, it also doesn't show how far we've really come and where we're going in the future. So that convoluted mess of words that I just put together that make no sense at all, I'm going to let you take it away and talk about this recent release.
Well, the Tax Foundation every year releases what's called the State Business Tax Climate Index, and this is the index for 2023, and it ranks the states overall, but the major categories of the ranking are corporate tax rank, the individual income tax rank, sales tax, and property tax, and unemployment insurance tax. Now, several years ago, Iowa was in the top 10 of the worst tax climate based on this Tax Foundation index. Right now,
top 10 worst or bottom 10, however you want to think about it.
Yes, yeah. And so this ranking comes out, and we are improving. We are ranked 38 out of 50. And let me just quickly. So corporate tax, we're 34. Individual income tax, 40. Sales tax, 15. And property tax, 40. But what this doesn't take into consideration is the recent reforms. So,
which are only beginning to take effect, right? And
so
we've talked about that.
I contacted the Tax Foundation and asked them, could you factor in the tax reform legislation that was passed this year? And so if that was in effect, I would move out to be the 13th best in the nation. Specifically, we would be ranked 10 for individual income tax, the 10th best for corporate tax, and then number 34 for property tax. And one of the reasons
one of those things is not like the other, John.
No, but the other thing too is what we're seeing, which is really kind of exciting for taxpayers, is that even when we hit 3.5% flat tax in 2026.
3.9.
Or I'm sorry, yeah.
Or was that another piece of breaking news
Yeah,
today?
no,
I couldn't read my writing. and the 5.5 flat corporate.
Right.
Iowa is still going to have to, and we know they're going to not just settle there, but there's so many states that are lowering their rates that it's going to be very competitive. And so even though we're going to have really good rates in a few years, it just shows how competitive other states are in terms of lowering their income tax rates. And it also shows us this 2023 index shows that there's a huge problem in Iowa, which we've talked about many times on this program, and that's property tax. Something has to be done about property tax in Iowa.
And it's not even just where we're at on the rankings, but the looming increase that Iowans will face when their assessments come back around again.
Yes, yeah.
You want it in, Chris.
I don't know that I did. I don't know that I did. I mean, as the report speaks to, and again, I think that report came out even just today,
It
right?
did, yeah.
There's all sorts of news that our listeners are getting by listening to the podcast today. This might be the most breaking news we've ever done. But some of those top 10 states are not just low tax states, John, but they're no tax states.
That's right, yeah.
Right. But okay. And again, that's the goal. That's the stated goal of a number of our elected officials. It's a stated goal of ours, of the Iowans for Tax Relief Families. We'd like to get there. But with the reforms already enacted and that we're making progress towards, we're going to move right up that ranking, except for property tax. And we're going to have to figure out a way, and we've got lots of ideas to rein in that local government spending, to take that off of autopilot, and figure out a way for that to improve as well.
Yes, we do. And we'll have much more to say as we move forward, especially into the legislative session. I think backing up to what that report is about is tax competitiveness. And businesses move around this country for a number of reasons, but a very high among that list is the bottom line consideration of what's our tax rate if we locate into this state, what's the tax rate for our workers, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, workforce is a giant challenge. I want to acknowledge that, but you can just see the stark difference in our competitiveness before we went on this journey of tax reform over the last several years, and just how competitive Iowa is going to be afterwards. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we talk about when we talk about the real need for tax relief, is that it doesn't just benefit the individual, it benefits the state broadly.
Chris, when you all, because you were a legislative leader, in fact, who voted for that first round of tax reforms in 2018.
Yes.
We held a grassroots event that fall after that event. And again, tax cuts had been passed that were going to phase in, but they had not really kicked in yet at all. But one business owner said, what's important to me? I just need to know that the state is with us. The state's not out to collect more and more money. In fact, the state is setting out on a path to allow his business to keep more of their money. And it's the same thing you've heard many times. They plan to reinvest that into their business with equipment, with raises, with, again, into the communities and into employees. And the key, again, to repeat, is this business owner just needed to know that the state was with them, not against them. And what better way to show that than to keep making progress on that?
I think that's a great point, is that not only have we enacted a great set of reforms and really laid the foundation for future economic growth, but by every indication, this set of leaders that we have are committed to continuing to have a pro-business, pro-freedom, low-tax environment in the state of Iowa. And everyone that's paying attention knows that. And so it is that future certainty that comes from having those leaders in place. And as we will see in 2 weeks, re-electing them to office and their commitment to those ideas. And so that business owner should be encouraged, and that business owner should feel that government in Iowa is trying their very best to get out of the way and let businesses grow and thrive and invest the way they know how to do. and that's where we're at. So I think that's just as I landed that, we hit 20 minutes, which is the predetermined ideal time for a podcast, which is based on nothing other than an arbitrary number that we picked out of thin air when I started this project. But
can I have 30 seconds?
I suppose.
For our listeners who would like more than 20 minutes of our take and who appreciate John's insight, John, you were recently a guest on a podcast. Would you like to give a quick plug for that? So if our folks want more John before our next release, they can find it?
I was a guest on Vance Ginn, who's the chief economist at the
Pelican Foundation.
Pelican Foundation. He used to be with Texas Public Policy Foundation, and he's also a contributing scholar here at Iowans for Tax Relief Foundation. But Vance interviewed me for about an hour, and we talked about Iowa tax policy and then some national issues, as well as Vance
some 1920s American politics.
Yeah, we
also.
talked about
the
Harding-Coolidge policies, and then we talked a little bit about trade policy at the end.
Well, and Vance might not be, a household name outside of the think tank world, but he really is a extremely bright guy who has a pretty long set of credentials and is very interesting to talk to. So that's something that will be linked in the description of the podcast, so folks can listen to that. Because I know I talk to a lot of people, John, when I'm out and about, and I need more John Hendrickson. It's just this 20, 22 minutes I get every so often isn't enough. I need more. So
I think the prelude to a trade war book was sort of whet everyone's appetites. It's hard to find. It's out of print, and so where can they get a little more of that insight, folks? The podcast with John and Vance is a place to go.
Yep, absolutely. So I think that'll do it for today. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your contributions. And we will endeavor to have something a little bit more polished for our transitions and handoffs next time. But I still think it was pretty good stuff. So you guys carried me today.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this time on ITR Live. Don't forget to give us a 5-star review, subscribe, whatever you need to do on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We really appreciate it. And with that, we will see you next time.